Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Square. Welcome to TCEA. Does that sound okay? That would be so right location. Well, we're glad you're here. We have a great opportunity today to work with you in terms of design, helping you learn what design means in relation to education and the future of education. Today what we're going to do is we're going to actually actively engage you as designers. It's a big part of today. It's not about sitting and listening to us talk. It's about even to design your own design thinking can bring. Most importantly, what it's impact can be on teaching you. My name is David Jakes. I'm a member of the Third Teacher Plus out of Chicago, Illinois. This is my 28th year in education, and I still consider myself to be a teacher, certainly. And I have the unique opportunity to work with a great group of professionals designing learning spaces. My particular role is to actually work with architects in our firm to actually design digital spaces. So it's really a compelling, intriguing kind of opportunity. Today I'm joined by my colleague, Christian Long, who just recently left the Third Teacher and has begun to run his own direction with his own studio. So we're really looking forward to seeing where that can go. This is the 5th year of Digital Square, and I think it was called something else before, but again, what a unique opportunity to take a look around you. It's filled with some wonderful new kinds of furniture from Steelcase. So we'd like to really publicly thank Steelcase for putting this location with some terrific kind of spaces that obviously can fit into schools and classrooms. We'd like to say thank you. We're now at Steelcase in reference. You're on Twitter. That Twitter handle is Steelcase EDU. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn over to Christian, and away we go.
First and foremost, we thank you for coming. It's not loud. Is this better? A little bit better? I'll try to project as well. First and foremost, we know that this is a space that invites coming in as well as exit. So if at any point in time you're just drawing something else, we're not going to take offense. This is pretty amazing. If you're drawing other things you're doing, that's fine. We appreciate your ability to jump. We're going to try to get into this just a lot.
One thing you learn very, very quickly when you're designing spaces for learning is that, with an eye on the future, is that we have to be constantly agile. We have to constantly adapt. We're never going to get the ideal space, but it's a matter of how we use spaces to our advantage. Like David, I'm an educator as well. I was a high school English teacher for many, many years, and just sort of fell in curiosity and later in love with the idea that if we can design the spaces, that we have a positive influence on what it meant to teach and learn. Where David and I are coming in today with this session is a real curiosity about design, not necessarily designing the physical object, the space, but instead design as a mindset. Design as a way to make sense of the world, and most importantly, to make an impact, to make a positive impact. So how many of you are familiar with design thinking as a methodology or as a trend, as sort of movement? Okay. So if this were a design thinking session, like a design thinking 101, we would walk through the steps one by one. We would be talking about discovery, we'd be talking about iteration, we'd be talking about brainstorming, prototyping, etc. We're going to be applying all of that, but we're not going to be teaching, if you will, a program on those. We would be absolutely happy to recommend resources, to make introductions, to suggest books to read, and websites. So after the fact, if you just want to deepen what you know about design thinking and its impact on K-12 in particular, we would love to help you make whatever connections you can. And if you're not in the Sherbrooke Star, we're happy to help there. But what we're curious about today is, can we treat the future of learning as a design question? And that's sort of how we'll approach it. The purpose of our time together, we're going to try to honor the fact that your time is valuable, but again, we know you come in, so we want to give you a little bit of sense of how the rest of the day will go, or at least the rest of the next hour and 20-some-odd minutes. We have a couple of micro challenges. Each table will end up becoming a small group. If there needs to be a third person, you can invite a third person, and that's great. You're standing back. We can help you kind of observing. If you're able to invite people over, take advantage of the table because there will be an exercise. We're actually be able to write well matter. And beyond that, we'll make it up as we go. David?
I spent a long time in educational technology, there was software, computers, and things like that, and when you take a look at those kinds of things, ultimately they start somewhere, right? And typically they start with a sketch. And one of the things that's really intriguing for me to watch and see as someone who's stepping into an architectural world is how designers actually work. And that's been really nice. And really when you walk through our offices, you see sketches everywhere. It is the thing that starts the thinking process going and manifests the thinking on a tangible product. You see it on our walls. There's opportunity. You see people. I get paid everywhere. People are sketching. The walls are sketching on trace paper. You can even sketch on napkins, obviously. So what we're going to do is get you into the design process right away. And Christian's going to introduce that to you. This again is an active engaged session. I want you to make sure we invoke that as designers. We want you to do that too. So away you go.
All right, first things first, we need to set the conditions so that you can do this exercise with us. On your table, you'll notice that each table has at least one of these. If you're not in a place where you're at a table and you want to join, either by standing, we actually recommend that a lot of times sitting is not necessarily what we want to do every time we're engaged. So feel free if you're here with the taller tables to stand. What we're going to need is that space to be as available to you as possible because you're going to be working with a pair. In this case, the two of you would be a great fit. You're going to be working very, very quickly, which means if you have a coffee on the table, you have a laptop on the table, you have an iPad, etc., you may want it for the next 5 minutes, just take that off. Ideally, there would be a minimum of 2 people, maybe up to 3 at each table, but this should be seen as an exercise with a teammate, not solo. We'll start in 1 minute, so we'll just give you a chance to kind of reset the table. We're going to need 1 pen to go with a piece of paper with all the blocks. So hopefully everybody has access to at least 1 pen per team. And again, if you're by yourself, take a second to introduce yourself to somebody else so you can work as a team. There's a table over here, back one of the round tables. That'll get somebody else on this other side as well. Does every table have a team? And does every table have a pen or something to write with? And again, I would remove iPads and notebooks and all of that because you're going to need to work very quickly with each other. Fair enough? Okay, so here's the prompt. As David hinted, in the design world, and that applies to software design as much as it applies to architectural design, screenwriting, etc. Almost every product begins with some version of a wireframe or a storyboard. In essence, great products start as stories. They start as journeys. They start as, I imagine X, what would happen if? So we want to start this. In this exercise, you're going to have very, very little time. As a team, you need to complete the entire storyboard. And you have under 5 minutes. Now the prompt is this, starting at the first block, you'll see not well drawn, but hopefully conceptually accurate. 2 Legos and what looks to be an iPhone or an iPad, if you'll excuse the scale. Your story is simple. It stars a learner. It's up to your team to decide where is that learner, what age, what does learning mean, what moment in time. But what you have in front of you is a really, really simple invitation. The first box has already been drawn for you. One of your partners will draw the second box. And ideally talk out loud so the partner can understand what they're starting to see in the sketch. These are stick figures. This is definitely not an art class. It's meant to be implying ideas. So one person is going to take the prompt of that first box with the Legos and what looks to be an iPhone or something like an iPhone. And is going to draw the second part of the story. And then quickly hand the paper and the pen over to the partner, and that partner will continue the story. until all line boxes are complete. You have 5 minutes, and we'll give you a 1-minute warning at the end. The idea is to work quickly. Don't worry about being right, just make progress. That's it. Any questions? Feel free to start.
Teacher teaches them how to do the domino-related activity in the iPad. Then
Learning kind of thing. So is that what we want to shoot for?
Why don't you have like
Your mom.
maybe presentation?
well, this is good.
What we can have for
Okay, time's up.
together.
All right. Who wants to share? We need a couple volunteers. Mr. Wood, how about you?
Well, the first place we went, we figured the kids are going to go to YouTube and start looking for stuff, see how to create. And then we had several different Mindstorm apps here on the pad. We started looking at programming, different ways to program what they were going to do, collaboration with a bunch of other kids or people, and then reaching out on social media in different ways to talk to different folks and get their ideas as well. And then they were laying everything out, putting it together, and then coming to school, working with some kids on the way in, and then making a good presentation at the end.
And you started by doing, actually, the last item number 9. You began with that, right?
We want to see where they need to end up and work our way back.
Okay, we started out with a project idea that the students were going to use Legos. They saw 2 Legos and they decided that they needed them. So they decided they wanted to create a bridge out of Legos that would support the weight of an object. They wanted a plan for how many Legos they would need. So as they're thinking this process together collaboratively, they use their phone to research bridge projects and also how many Legos they might need for that. And then they get down, they do some prototyping, and they design their plan much kind of like this. And then at the end, it shows them building their bridge and actually doing this activity together.
Tell us a little bit about your process. How do you have a process?
This one right here, we talked back and forth. So it wasn't a silent process where I felt like her ideas were hers and mine were mine. We shared and the ideas were built upon each other.
Fantastic. One more.
All right, so we sort of took on the same go to square number 9, but we went bigger instead of really specific. We said we want our kids to make an impact on the world. So at the very end, we just had a picture of the world and a student. In between, we started with they just had a pile of Legos, and they went to their device and they found tools for gathering what was right in front of them and integrating that in. We kind of led them then into the STEM process where they're playing with it, improving it, imagining, creating, taking it to the next step. Then they started building with their Legos. Then all of a sudden they were all empowered with what they had built. And then they wound up finding a way to travel up to this other part of space and build a colony there.
So you started with Legos and you went all the way to change the world, right? Fantastic. Last one.
We came up with a design or an idea that was very similar to the previous one. We had a toddler who was leaving the Legos behind and discovering the technology on the device. And then we had him building with Legos on the device. And then once he had constructed something, he took a snapshot of it and sent it to Grandma. Grandma got really excited and opened up FaceTime. And they FaceTimed and moved and awed over it. And then she started teaching him how to do more with Legos. And then the cycle began over again.
Fantastic.
So, from our vantage point, two really remarkable things took place simultaneously. On one hand, you were given not an epically impossible challenge, but you were given at 8 o'clock in the morning at the beginning of a major conference a challenge that was not necessarily guaranteed that it would be successful. Very little time, didn't necessarily have time as a team to sort of form your approach, your strategy. Weren't necessarily sure where this is all going to go. It isn't even playing to the strengths of all the technology we have around us. So in essence, it was a challenge that does not guarantee a real success. Right? On a really simple level, as an educator, that's a really interesting moment to observe. We have a room full of people that we're here to serve. They may not have a choice in this meeting. They're sitting down and be offered to get up, but they could disengage. They could not trust. They could start to run the numbers on, was this of value? What am I going to need this? And that's an interesting part of the paradox, or an interesting part of the design challenge. The other side is in the first 30 seconds, if you had had the privilege of watching the body expressions, the body language, the eyes, the face, the expressions, there would have been a lot of reason to go, this is not going to go well. Right? And one's ego and pride could get really tossed asunder. Intellectually, this makes sense. I can scaffold. I know where this is going to go. It's part of a methodology that's totally on me. And yet, my people look like they're in pain. Right? And so we live in a day and age where we're asking young people to take on wicked challenges that none of us were trained for. We're asking them to be agile, but at the same time stay between the lines. We're asking them to be overscheduled, but at the same time to be creative. We're asking them to pay attention, but also to hack the future. In that first couple of minutes, proverbially, it looks painful. Then something magical happened. The assignment stopped being the point. And group by group by group, if you were watching the structure, people started to smile. People started to connect conversationally. The assignment was not a barrier. Really what was going on is there was something happening between the people themselves. And whether it was a 4-minute or a 6-minute, or we could triple that, it was almost irrelevant. Because what was more important in this design equation was not the object, was not the prototype, was not the cardboard and duct tape mock-up. It wasn't the first iteration of a piece of software. It wasn't the final report or science project. What it was is design focused on creating conditions so that human beings will form a team, where they will find each other. So as designers, we are deeply interested in, can we design a school for the future, literally, architecturally, physically, that will resonate, will be provocative, will be inviting. But much more importantly, we're interested in design as a commitment to human beings. In essence, can design be human-centered, not object-centered? Right? A couple different things. You also experienced, for all intents and purposes, the entire design thinking process in 5 minutes. We didn't lecture, we didn't go to Wikipedia, we didn't go, what was that step again? You just lived the design process, minus 1 or 2 minutes. You had a remarkable constraint on time and resources, which is ground zero for the design. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we got to ship tomorrow. And hope we are staying in business or not soon, or the product works when my child plugs in a volcano and hopefully it erupts. You iterated, you brainstormed, you hacked, you prototyped, you sketched. You also went in as many different directions as there were teams, which means there wasn't an answer book. There was a spectrum of possibilities. It's interesting, but something's missing. And I think often as educators, when we're invited to go into the design room, 2 things are important. One is we want to make sure we get it right, so we're constantly focused on the end result. And I'm not even talking about test scores. What I mean is we really want to know, did it work? Did it lead to something? Is there proof that what my kids did will be valid? But something's missing at the very beginning, and that is the why did we go on that expedition in the first place? The original. So David and I are very, very curious about 2 major things, both in terms of learning as well as the design process. One is, how do we double down on empathy? And not in the character development kind of program. But in essence, our ability to accomplish this is based on the speed of our ability to listen to each other. If we're able to understand where the other person's coming from and build off of that to say yes and, as opposed to yeah but. If any of you said yes but to each other, you would not have finished this exercise. And as a designer, you have plenty of time to value engineer to something that will perfectly work. But early on, you need to commit to listening and saying, it's an interesting idea, we can build on it. And often in education, we don't build in time for that. We're so in love with where it can go that we forget that that first engagement with our kiddos and our colleagues in the back room, etc. From a design standpoint, the magic is, do we build in the capacity and abilities to play off of each other, to say yes and. Two, there has to be a degree of wonder and curiosity. It can't be about being efficient. It can't be about, wait a minute, that's not important, what's the solution here? So that's the area that we want to focus on today with you. So we appreciate you taking up the expedition. Now we're going to go a little bit further. This is where we're going to begin. So the question is, what does this look like in school? How many are familiar with the E-School and Stanford? 1, 2, 3. We mentioned earlier that we'd be delighted to point you to resources, make introductions, suggest readings. If you're an educator that's interested in design as curriculum, as pedagogy, as framework, as rubric, as a way to scaffold project-based learning, inquiry, et cetera, you're into STEAM and STEM, you do robotics, you're really interested in the cardboard challenge and Cave to Arcade, and all of a sudden you're like, there's this design thinking thing. The D-School Stanford is a remarkable set of assets and resources. There's an interesting program at the D-School Stanford, which are predominantly graduate students at one of the top universities in the world. So they are the best and brightest of all the kids we have as far as academics. There's a program within it that essentially challenges young people, and they're in their mid-20s, so I mean young in that sense, to take on wicked challenges that are going to impact those that are so often left behind. So it's not a service project in the sense of raise money, collect blankets. It's what's an intractable, massive, epic problem that's going to affect billions of people around the planet. And can we treat that as a design challenge? A group of students recently were given the following challenge. On average, 20,000 children are born prematurely around the globe each year. That means, in essence, that 20 million children are born in the 6th, 7th, and 8th month. They're not ready. And they're generally in states of poverty and lack of resources, which means that 4 million of them will die, which is about 450 babies dying on a daily basis simply because they were born early and lack access to resources. Now, the most obvious way to tackle that problem is to provide an incubator. Keep them warm. It's complicated, but it's really simple. The challenge is the incubator costs in the neighborhood of $20,000. In the developing world, that's not just a challenge, that's an instrument. So this group of students were given the problem of how do you take this, which is essentially hacking an incubator, using a desk lamp and a little tube and a plastic bucket, because the difference between these children living and dying may come down to that. And how do you create a more elegant solution? And they did what so many of our best and brightest students do, and often else, is they solved the problem. And they built an extraordinary incubator that cost several $1,000s, not $20,000. And the technology was dramatically better. They did everything we asked of our students. They happen to be 25 to 30 years old, but it's everything we asked our 1st and 6th and 12th graders to do. Come up with a much better solution. And here's the kicker. As designers, they put that incubator in a hospital and watched for 2 weeks, and not a single baby went inside the incubator. There is the moment where design becomes interesting. From an engineering standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a get it done and prove that it works standpoint, they got an A. The problem is, not a single baby's life is affected by perfect and accurate, and we can prove it, and we did it right. Because it turns out the design challenge wasn't about babies in incubators, it was about two things. That mother has to let go of that baby in the first place. It's a mother trusting you, taking her baby away that's been born premature. Two, it's a transportation problem, because if the babies can't get to the hospital, it's a moot point. And the reason I bring this up, because this has now turned into a really viable business, positively affecting little babies and families and communities around the world. It was started by a couple of 24-year-olds at Stanford. And it took the idea of swaddling cloth, maybe the most ancient technology for mothers and babies that existed. Wrap the baby, keep it warm. It's the womb in cloth form. And they created a remarkable technology. It did two things. It allowed the mother to let go, and allowed the baby to transport to the hospital. But there was one more problem. In this community, if the mother couldn't see the chest rise and fall, she wouldn't put a child inside and swallow the blood. Right? Now imagine being a designer and realizing months and months and months of development on behalf of something really important that works, and ends up failing on two epic levels. One is no babies used it, and then two, the mother, because she couldn't see. And for us as designers, we're really curious about learning and treat this both as a metaphor as well as a real exercise, because this is the world that our young people are going into. Building products for problems that are massive and extraordinary, but also doable. But until they watched the eye contact with the mother, until they went back and thought about the relationship of handing the baby over, until they thought about the heartbeat, until they thought about that it wasn't about an incubator, it was about a relationship, they couldn't, as designers or problem solvers, even come close to identifying what their purpose was. And I think as educators and designers, that's an interesting challenge for us. Getting into college may be the epic challenge, or it may be how do you thrive once you're on campus. Or in this case, we can solve the problem, but do we actually know what to listen for? So David?
So what we want to do is we can take some next steps in terms of helping you think through this. And if you take a look at this one, designing mindsets for the future. There's a couple of pillars of words there. Of course, the future is you don't really know what that is. Of course, the idea is how we design mindsets that are capable of operating in a future kind of context. And really that will form the remainder of our challenge to give you some ideas to work through that question. So one of the things that we had seen recently, in fact, it was yesterday, is this great article that considers the role of technology and how that fits within society is balanced against the human condition. It's a really intriguing article that challenges you to think of the separation between what computers and technology can do and what humans can accomplish that they can't. There's some tension between that. Christian, you're going to go ahead. So what we'd like you to do is, this is from the New York Times, and it's from David Brooks. So what machines can't do, and what we'd like to do, is actually have you read that and process that. So go ahead and read that, please. it's actually very provocative. And that question at the end, well, what human skills will be most valuable? What's really truly compelling about that? I want to take a couple ideas from the crowd. When you look at that, what human skills would be more valuable? How do you answer that? What's contribute?
Going on what you said earlier, empathy, understanding how people are reacting,
So empathy is a core skill that's going to be more and more valuable in the future. Separate systems, mechanical kinds of things. Other ideas?
The ability to adapt and change as conditions change.
So two more. What skills will be most valuable as we pursue?
Designing to solve problems.
Okay, so acting as a designer, being able to approach problems with a design mind.
So when we were thinking about coming here to TCEA and realizing that collectively we have a real passion and bias towards technology being an agent that empowers, an agent that capitalizes, and we started to really kind of run the numbers on what does it look like going forward. Both the pressures politically and academically and culturally to help our kids succeed, matched against this sort of goal to rush technology. And then try to think, what does it look like as we go forward? What's going to allow not just young people to be successful, but maybe even more importantly, to be relevant, to be of value. So this becomes as much a philosophical as it does a tactical challenge. So if you think about what you just said there, Brooks's answer, is that the vast majority of these skills, and this goes back to Dan Pink and Thomas Friedman, over the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a whole range of books and language and examples that educators are being interested. So it's one of many voices pushing on this, that the vast majority of skills that we have been trained to do, and therefore our guiding, mentoring, and teaching our young people to be able to do, are the ones that can be done in automated terms. The ones that are going to make a young person most viable, valuable, and of value require a different mindset. And it's not something that's tomorrow or 5 years from now. But it's an interesting provocation for us. So in essence, as designers, what we're curious about is how we create the conditions by which that mind that David Brooks is hinting at becomes the default setting, not a bonus. Right? That becomes the design question.
So when I'm thinking about Brooks's question, this prompt, the way I would answer that is imagination. And one of the things as I take a look at education over 28 years and where education is going, where it's been, and where it's headed, I think about one of the most valuable kinds of skills that are necessary, kind of mindset that's necessary, is an imagination. So to that end, the raw material for imagination, in a lot of ways, is this conceptualization of curiosity and wonder. And one of the things that we're very intrigued at as designers, Christian and I, we've spent a lot of time working between our group as well as with audiences, is to understand the relationship of curiosity, relationship to wonder, how it relates to learning. And it's something that is not something to be taken lightly. How does curiosity and wonder develop? How does that form the conditions and really the context for how learning should take place? It is an important question that we want to explore with you. So when you're taking a look at this, what is it? So take a look and read this. We believe that the future of learning is going to be designed with curiosity and wonder imagination blend into that. So, the question we have for you is this. The provocation is, what is the role of wonder and curiosity in learning? It's a very serious question for the context of the remainder of our work today. So, in your groups, you've got 10 minutes, and if you're a little larger group, that's fine. But we want to have you explore these two ideas, wonder, curiosity, okay, and what they actually mean. Are there differences between the two? Which one's larger, for example? I won't continue that and explore it any further, but take 10 minutes and start thinking about wonder, curiosity, what it means in the context of learning. So what's its role in the go.
Concepts, and I think that's what wonder and curiosity.
These conversations, and you had some really intriguing ideas and went in a compelling direction. So, for me, one of the interesting things is that when I talk about this idea with educators, some people will say, we don't understand why you're so interested in a couple terms like this, two terms, wonder and curiosity. And it's not even compelling your interest in this. And I would make the case for the argument that this is exactly what we need to be talking about in education. In other words, if you're taking kids on an epic adventure learning, how do you establish that? How do you create the conditions that will enable you to manifest that? So I'm really intrigued about what you said. I thought you were clapping for me. No? You weren't clapping for me?
Yes, I was.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, all right. So let's have some ideas. We go around the room and let's explore together for about 5 minutes with lots of
It's a Microsoft virtual update.
Wonderful technical. How many of you have been in this side before? Okay, so that's not that important. So, ideas about wonder, curiosity, the difference, the relationship, and what it means for the future. So, who wants to start?
We talked about wonder and curiosity as being a natural ability within all of us and children. And when they enter school, somehow that isn't cultivated. So in designing the learning experience, it would just be an extension of their natural development, their wonder and curiosity as toddlers and preschool and exploring the world around them and answering questions and making sure that we don't mess it up with that.
Okay, so both are innate learners, and we don't want school to be the way. One of the things that I thought was really intriguing about what you said is teacher as a designer of the learning experience. I think that's really compelling. What does that mean? As you go through TCEA in the next couple of days, teachers have lots of roles, but can you see yourself as designers of the learning experience with a foundation of wonder and curiosity that you build in so that that experience helps in general and brings that back to life? So,
okay, pardon my cold. So we were talking about wonder and curiosity, and I have a 6-year-old, and I see that he's very naturally inclined to look into different things. And I don't think we provide enough of that opportunity for students. There's a first grade teacher I thought was a really great idea where they, say, go home and they're working with the parents, and if there's just whatever you're interested in, research it and bring it back to the class. So you have these natural experts who are naturally inclined to look into things, and I think those are really great ideas of where every kid has a gift, and I knew very early on I wanted to be a teacher, and early on and then all the way up. And I think all of our kids kind of have a natural inclination to do something and be passionate about it and have that wonder and curiosity. There's also a video I was kind of mentioning. It's called Failing Superman. It's 13 minutes, and it has like all the superheroes in it, and it's talking about how all of these superheroes have these
these natural inclinations, like Joker really likes chemistry and things like that, but, you know, when they go to school, they might love learning in there, but what they want to learn about isn't on the menu. And it's a really great video about curiosity and inquiry-based learning and all those sorts of things. So.
This is exciting to me because I'm seeing as a librarian for the school that to push the area of wonder and curiosity takes teachers out of their comfort zone. Kids are going to ask or do things that they can't respond to, so they want to drive black and white. This is what we're going to do. This is the lesson plan, and we're sticking to it. And so they kick wonder and curiosity out of it because of the lack of self-confidence and ability. We weren't trained this way. We've always done it's open sequences the way it's done. And so for us to be challenged, that's where it starts. We need to be challenged.
How many, so you're basically saying that designing learning experience for wonder and curiosity takes us out of our comfort zone because we're so used to perhaps helping kids in a very traditional way. Would that be fair? Mark.
Yesterday, for me, summed it up. Why do we expect differentiated learning in the classroom, but standardize our testing?
Differentiated learning, but standardized testing. Which one's bigger? Which one is bigger, wonder or curiosity? People that think wonder is bigger, raise your hand. I guess that means everybody else thinks curiosity is. So it's already been figured out. Well, you come on. What?
Wonder gets me in trouble.
It gets you in trouble. Let's explore that for a second.
No, it's true. But I was that kid who sat around going, well, I wonder what would happen in it.
I wonder what would happen is.
I'm not sure if it's wonder or curiosity being bigger. I agree with her that I think wonder comes first, and then the curiosity is where you act upon your wonder to find out more.
Okay, so wonder begins first and allows you to act with curiosity, or the trajectory and pathway of learning.
I was wondering if wonder is used as a verb or as a noun, because wonder could be like a sense of awe about something. It could also be the verb that causes the curiosity.
We kind of talked about curiosity being more a personal sort of thing, a drive you have of learning within yourself, and wonder really kind of looking at perhaps the systems of things and trying to strive to improve something, changing things, looking at things at a grander scale, maybe.
How many teachers are in the room? Raise your hand if you're a teacher. When's the last time you asked your kids to wonder about things? Do you write down every day? Fantastic. Do you have a culture of wonder and curiosity in the classroom? And how would that make learning come alive? So, I think a lot about the two, and I wonder a lot about our current curriculum, for example, how that standardized curriculum, how those kinds of experiences, that kind of what's required for people to translate that into a climate and culture of wonder. When I was a science teacher, I did the same experiments every year, and they actually held no wonder or curiosity for me. I knew exactly about it. So how does the learning environment reshape that so that both teacher and student experience wonder and curiosity through the learning experience? So in other words, there's a breakdown in roles, and it goes from teacher and student. These are just culture of learning in the classroom. Wonder and curiosity form the basis of that and give rise to imagination. That's the genesis of that. All right, so next up, that was continue to think about this. Okay? And continue to think about how curiosity and wonder flow into the conversation or the expedition of learning. The next step is this. How many of you have a mission statement on your school's website? Yeah, a mission statement. How many of you have a vision statement? Pay attention to that. Yes, and you should, right?
My question, our district's mission and vision 2 years ago when we made the budget cuts, and granted, stuff had to be done, but then I felt like our mission and vision statements needed to be changed.
I would argue that we all have the same mission. It's to educate kids, right? You can disagree with that, you can agree with that, or interpret it any way. The vision is the interpretation of how you actualize that. But I'm not so much interested in mission and vision right now. What I'm interested in is really making a declaration that involves curiosity and wonder, okay? That declares the relationship of those two ideas to the context of learning. So your next step is this, is to create, we're going to build a manifesto, okay? Create the conditions for wonder and curiosity to be vital for the future of learning. That is the prompt, that's the provocation. Create the conditions for wonder and curiosity to be vital for the future of learning. You need 5 declarative statements, okay, that declare really to the world what you believe about how you would answer that question. Then, below that, so the manifesto is 5 statements. We believe, that's how you start. This we believe to be true. Okay. And then there's a Google Doc that we would like you to upload your 5 ideas to. It's at tinyurl.com, manifesto, TCEA. That is it. So the charge for each group is now to come up with a manifesto of beliefs centering around wonder and curiosity and how it relates to the future of learning. This we believe is idea 1, idea 2, idea 5. And so, to do this requires some bravery. We have to step forward. Okay? So we want you to be bold, we want you to be brave. It is time to paint your face blue. Okay? Right. So the next step, back to this next slide, is to take 10 minutes. How long are we going to give for this? 15. It says it right there on the screen. 15 minutes, 5 statements, and then we'll share it. Okay. Keep going. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at manifestos and what they represent, just go to Google, go to Google's image search and type in manifesto. There's the Holstein manifesto, there's the hip hop manifesto, there's the good enough manifesto, and these are really, really cool ways to represent what you believe. I mentioned to the group over there that if I was in the classroom today, what I would do my first day would be declarative and make that invitation to kids through a manifesto. Okay? This is what I believe, this is the kind of experience that you're going to have. Remember that curiosity and wonder form the foundation to that. So let's have some ideas. What are the best examples of your 5 statements that you can share with the group? Who's going to lead? Who wants to lead off? Your best statement that you like.
They said that perseverance will be valued as key cultural.
So we believe that perseverance is an element that is central to the idea of establishing wonder and curiosity and needs. Okay.
I think to address a lot of the conversation I had with people who are no longer here, and your specific thing about standardized testing earlier, one of my statements was there are no
Now I'm gonna prompt you in a different way here. What is the difference between an expedition and a journey? Just like we talked about curiosity and wonder, is there a difference between an expedition and a journey? Do you want to lead students on an expedition? Is that your role as a designer and learning students? Okay, so hold up. 2 for 2.
Students will take your experiences and knowledge and make it their own, manifesting unlimited possibilities.
Okay, so your particular statement deals with student agency, right? And they have their own disorders. Awesome. Couple more.
I said that I would provide a safe haven for my students where they won't be afraid to wonder and be curious, and that failure will be celebrated and seen as an opportunity for growth.
Okay, so there is an opportunity for celebration as we call it as a culture where it's safe to engage in wonder and curiosity. The fact that I may make mistakes is central to the role of learners. Is failure, is that an intriguing concept for you? Concept in education? The role of failure? That's a really hot topic, and it's a really intriguing way to think that that's a conversation we should have here.
We said teachers must let go of control and become designers, not dictators of learning.
Designers and not dictators of learning. You know, one of the things, you hear that sage on the stage stuff. You hear teachers as facilitators. I don't think that's strong enough. I don't think that's proud enough. Teachers do much more than facilitate. And we're really intrigued by what design means for teachers. And that role, assuming that role. More ideas. One more. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anyone? All right.
This is what we believe that design can create, support a culture of curiosity that should be accessible to all learners.
Inclusive, all learners.
Okay, so as you can imagine, as any of you who design curriculum, facilitate classrooms, invite young people or your colleagues on whatever expeditions or tasks that you do, then you're always doing two things as an educator. You're building what you believe will work, and you're also building a contingency plan. Because you know that it just takes one madly curious question in the whole class to take the whole class in a different direction. You know there's a fire bell, you know that some of the faculty meeting won't go quite the way that we anticipated it. And you can imagine this session invites that. It really kind of pushes on the boundaries of that. Can we create something which collectively allows us to build momentum, but it also allows people to come and go, right? It allows people to be interested, curious, but not all in. It also allows people to go, that's making sense to me, I want to move on, right? So what we want to do now for the final 20 minutes, we're going to give you one more design challenge. But what we elected to do just with the time is to say that we've made a lot of really good progress, but we need to now double back into context. We need to sort of challenge this moment of wonder, moment of curiosity. Not in the sense of, well, my district will allow me to do this, so yeah, what? I don't mean that kind of challenge. That's an honorable challenge, but I don't mean that kind. What I mean is, not, is this true? But if it is true, how do we now deepen the foundation? How do we substantiate it? How do we try it on Monday? And how do we also, as David said, how do we be bolder than maybe we are typically invited to be? Right? We also want to open up at the very end just to be your ally, to be a resource to you, and to point out, whether it be on Twitter or websites or people from TED Talks for you to watch, anything that's at the intersection of design. So we'll just sort of leave that be at the very, very end. But for us, the question now, if we were to leave right now, This is the question that David and I professionally as educators, as folks who work with teams that design and build schools and universities around the world, as people who are just madly curious about where ed tech and curiosity and not just 8 billion people, but pretty soon 9 billion people, and ultimately will our grandchildren care about any of the things that we thought were pertinent in the middle of whatever meeting we were just in. So this is the question for us. We assume there is a connection. Right? In the spirit of Ted Sizer's essential question. This doesn't provoke us to action, so it lacks that. But it demands that we take seriously. Not is it right or is it wrong, but what's the connection? And ultimately what we would also say as designers is it has to be hackable. There isn't an answer, there's a horizon line. And it has to be something that we don't wait to get it right. We don't have time to get it right. We just got to start moving in the right direction. We have to live the spirit of playful, the spirit of prototyping, the spirit of rip cardboard up, hot glue gun it together, turn into a robot, and then throw it away. So in any event, David and I are going to take a couple of minutes to sort of talk about context of how does this play out in the real world, but ultimately none of that will matter until it becomes pertinent and anchored in your community, your classroom. So that's why we want to end with the what are you curious about? But we'll create some context as to how is this playing out professionally and research-wise, etc. So, yeah, so
Thank you. So we talked about wonder and curiosity. This is from Bruce Vaughn's Complete Manifesto, and this is one of my favorite books. And from his Imagine learning throughout your life at the rate of an infant. Isn't that really telling? I mean, do we have the conditions within our classroom, in our schools, where that's something that we can achieve? Learning at the rate of an infant across a lifetime. So that's from Bruce Vaughn's manifesto. Another thing that he says, and I can't resist talking about and saying it, he'll also say that the wrong answer is the right answer in search of a different question. The wrong answer is the right answer in search of a different question. That feeds into the notion of wonder and curiosity in the environment, the culture of exploration surrounding learning. Okay, so that'll get you started thinking. It's from Bruce Vaughn and Manifesto. So, one of the things that we're intrigued about is that expedition where it's going? If it is indeed an expedition at all. Some would argue that we're on the pathway towards really an unremarkable destination. And that's for you to decide, okay? But again, the intent of working with you today is to reestablish and re-invoke your thinking around the conditions that can change that, if you do believe that to be true. So we have this thing. This is not the greatest graphic. Someone said that to me, Mr. Chase. It's not like the words of God. What's intriguing about that? What's compelling about that? Is it filled with wonder and curiosity? What does that take students? Okay. So, I don't know if it really fits with what I'm talking about. I couldn't resist not showing it. So, to do that though, this is one of my manifesto statements, and this is what I truly believe. Someone asked me the other day, said, what does the future of learning look like in 2026? And when I sat down and was being interviewed for that, I did my best to identify the conditions that I expected to see in 2026 around learning is connected and all that. And I didn't answer it right. The right answer, at least for me, would have been, I have no idea. But what I do know is this: prepare students for the opportunity and possibility. That's, I think, for me, that's from my manifesto that I wrote. That for me is probably the most important statement that relates to learning that I can offer you. Is we don't know what it is, but what kind of conditions, what kind of learning experiences can we design that prepare students for the opportunity and possibility?
So playing off of David, one way or another, I think collectively, we're at this interesting moment in time where we are exiting perhaps oldest experiments in modern civilization was a simple challenge. Could we give education away for free to every single student for free? Could we give it away to everybody for free? And if we look back 200 some odd years ago, that was the design challenge that is now globally embraced. And it was a ridiculous premise. There was no business plan, there was no budget, there was no guarantee of successful outcome. There was simply just start and figure it out. But we're at a moment in time where that feels not right anymore. It feels broken. And worse, educators feel like, parenthetically, I'm associated with that. And in some weird way, the very thing that's extraordinary, this commitment, everybody would have access to resources, mentors, opportunity, an extraordinary moonshot in the last couple of 100 years. All of a sudden now, on the front page of newspapers, politicians' rhetoric, and even our own board meetings, and sometimes even our own classrooms, we think it's broken. And worse, all of a sudden now educators of all kinds hedge their bets when they say, I'm a teacher. It's a really provocative move. What we learned, in essence, is that we're at the beginning of another extraordinary moonshot. And in essence, it's a design challenge. With a little bit of wisdom. So the curiosity is, how do we treat the next not as a defensive measure, not as a defensive posture, not as an either or, but as the moon looks different from here. So that's kind of where we're at as designers and huge geeks and fans of educators and learners. So in essence, the last 10 or 15 minutes, we want to suggest a different spin. Instead of the system's broken, or charters versus public, or where they just leave me alone because retirement's in 6 years, or if you just let my kids wonder, let's assume something different. Let's assume not the world is broken and we're calling them in to fix it. Let's assume a different spin. Let's assume epic success. And let's assume they're not called in to save anything, they're called in to create something extraordinary. And let's assume instead of how do we help each kid become the next Einstein, the next Da Vinci, and the next, all these sort of metaphors of what education is, your little kiddo can too become Einstein? No, she can't. It's just a marketing thing. It's well-intentioned, but it doesn't actually show us any grit. It's the wrong premise. The goal isn't for her to become Einstein. The goal is for her to put a dent in the future that's remarkably unique to her. Right? So what we're really curious about is not how do we come in and fix problems, but how do we team up to do extraordinary things based on we're in love with these things. We're in love. We're in awe of the possibility of kiddos and teachers and communities leaning forward. So in essence, this is what the rest of this is about. Has anyone heard of Singularity University? Has anyone heard of Singularity University? Anyone heard of the X Prize? Okay, 1 X Prize, 2 X Prize? Has anyone heard of Singularity is Near, or a guy named Ray Kurzweil? Okay, this is interesting. In the last 10 years, one of the most provocative universities came into existence, and almost everybody knows about it. We hear a lot about Khan Academy and Coursera and Udacity. We hear a lot about MOOCs. We hear a lot about, will my kids need a flipped classroom, and do I go home now and record myself giving a lecture so I can be up and home? And there's another model that is even more provocative. It's a university that exists for 2 reasons. One is it exists because NASA is effectively going out of business. 2, because Silicon Valley is a petri dish of possibilities. So Singularity University was founded by 2 gentlemen, and also a board, a lot of folks who came to support. One is a guy named Peter P. Amandus, who started the X Prize, which basically means if NASA's going out of business, and it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, in nation states to put a man and an object in space, We now need people to hack that problem out of a garage for not hundreds of millions of dollars, but for a scale of $5 or $10 million. We don't need a man on the moon, we need elevators to space. We need colonies on Mars in our lifetime. But NASA's going out of business, how do we solve that problem? It's Elon Musk, it's Tesla, it's Google putting air balloons, hot air balloons around the world to create infinite access to the internet for free. It's a really interesting moment when we're teaching 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 12-year-olds to project forward. Singularity University offers its graduate students who are coming from a lot of backgrounds the following invitation. And I'm not offering this in the sense of what should our elite and gifted and talented kiddos be trained to do. What I mean is a mindset. If the early quote from the New York Times says that most of the skills that we have been trained to train can be automated, and it turns out that empathy and curiosity and I get the gist, I get the basic idea, the intuit are valuable. That means it doesn't matter if you're a first-generation American. It doesn't mean if you're in poverty. It's infinitely scalable inside your knowledge. The other end of the spectrum says, what do we do with all that time? What do we do with that possibility? So imagine a school giving their challenge this way. This is your gentleman's scene. This is your break-even assignment. This isn't for the best and brightest tackle this. This is first day. Now think about this. A decade ago, nobody in this room, none of us could have identified a single organization on the planet that had built a product, a service, a platform, an object that had a positive impact on 1 billion people ever. I don't mean like governments and queens and kings. I mean like an organization with a business plan or a university with a mission statement. And yet in the last 10 years, we've point to dozens and dozens of companies that have scaled to the fact that they have an object or a platform or a Facebook app that have had a, arguably, positive impact on 1 billion people. So this is day one in this grad school. You and your team will build an object or a product or a concept or a program or methodology that will have a positive impact on a minimum of 1 billion people. This is the world we live in. No matter where our grocery store is, no matter what our family circumstances are. Meaning this problem is no harder than all the other problems we give each other. But this is the scale of impact. So it becomes an interesting premise. We have both been affiliated with Canada Design, which is a large architecture firm and 13 plus at a small studio within our global education team. And in essence, the last 2 or 3 years, they shifted in a really interesting way. And this is as Dave and I were entering. Historically, for 70 years, they did something really well. They did architecture, engineering, and construction management. They built buildings all around the world. Like every organization on the planet, they did something well over and over and over again and developed a reputation of credibility and wisdom. And then all of a sudden they said, we don't do architecture anymore. That's not the challenge the world needs us to solve. I mean, they do architecture. They do teach. They do pave the roads, so to speak. As an organization, they do the things. But they said the future doesn't need us to build buildings. We need to tackle the wicked challenges of the future. We may build buildings to make manifest solutions, or we may apply, more importantly, how to solve problems towards these messages. And it's an interesting thing when you talk about a mission statement. We want to prepare all kids to be global learners, lifelong learners, go to college. Nothing's wrong with that. But when that's the ceiling, it's hard to be full of wonder. It's a commodity, it's a transaction. When we flip it and say we want to position young people to take on the grand challenges of our future at any scale where they existed, at the scale of their first love affair, at 14 when he's got a crush, that's an intractable problem. We teach them to be responsible historically, but do we teach them to have the ability to respond? If they move on up and they're trying to lend themselves to their community in terms of volunteering, in terms of raising money, in terms of just being a decent citizen, do they teach that as a responsibility? Or how do we create the conditions by which we do it? So we have been designing buildings and schools that have taken on this challenge. In this case, we had a 6-year-old inner city Chicago sandwich on our roof. Because the first problem is having 10 kiddos that are 2 years behind when they enter kindergarten, which we already can do the math and we know what the projection is. And create a program where you're a year to 2 years ahead within 2 school years. That's within our purview. That shouldn't be the grand challenge. We should just get busy making it. But then they wanted to build a campus, and the school committed and said, it's not enough to build a campus. We need to put more energy back into the grid. We want to build a campus that puts more energy back into Chicago, and we take from it. We don't want our first graders to eventually go to college. We want them to redefine what it means to be regenerative and sustainable in the future. Of course they'll be bilingual, of course they'll take yoga, and of course we have Union Chicago Public School cafeteria partners. And the kids said they want sheep on the roof. And that's cute and clever. Except what it really was how do we reclaim 10 acres of urban industrial complex and put nature in? And how do we do that with first graders and third graders? There's a chicken in the playground, and there's a garden, but there's also a mindset. These first graders, 90% Latino, 90% minorities, 90% first generation Boston to go to college. And these kids believe their moral mission is to rebuild Chicago in the first grade, not to run a field trip to Chicago. It's a different epic invitation. She was, the school's called Academy for Global Citizenship. The founder's name is Sarah Elizabeth Gibble. She was 23 when she went to the mayor of Chicago and said, we're going to build this school. He said, no. 25, build a school. He said, no. 27, he said, build a school, get my campus. After she was successful for a couple years, the natural thing we do when we rush to solutions, we said, we'll fund you build 10 of these. She goes, there's a problem. I turned down 17 children for every one I can accept. I can build 1,000 of these schools and won't impact anything until we have 50 million children around the world living this for free. We haven't even started. Now imagine being 27, starting a charter school or public school or whatever your program is, and after the first iteration going, we got to get bigger. It's not enough to get it right. We have to change the game. So imagine being the design partner, or the technology partner, or the parent-to-school community partner. What are the questions you ask? What are the issues you create? We're part of a book that we can share more about, but really the question was, what if every teacher and student was a designer, not waited for designers? We worked with Edutopia, the Church Service Education Foundation, and they asked us, would you create something that would teach teachers about design? We said, that's great, but the truth is it's all for free on Google. We don't need the marketing high five on that one. But what if we could turn 1 million teachers into hackers?
Amen.
Right? The goal isn't for us to be right. The goal is there should be 1 million teachers around the country tomorrow saying everything's hackable, everything's a design problem. It's an attitude, it's a mindset. It's chutzpah. It's joie de vivre. It's a sense of why not. So we've been experimenting, and the more we're experimenting, it's becoming less about the object, about getting the app right, getting the schedule right, getting kids into the right school, and more about the future's inviting us to a different question. We started something we've been developing something called Prototype, which is working with teachers and kids around the world to basically use design to make a positive impact. And the first rule we said is we don't want to get it right and repeat it. We want to undo every single time. Which means instead of here's our curriculum and YouTube can do it, instead, how do we train as a malleable mindset? But what's been really interesting is when we send the kids come play, our teachers, the goal is to become an architect or learn our skills or whatever it is. It's for the rest of your life, look for the things that will make you madly curious and you think you can put a shoulder against. So we're interested at every scale. Monday morning, how can a 4th grader believe he or she can put a shoulder against something or his shoulder against something? Driven by his or her curiosity, not high stakes ego. We've been traveling the world and exploring people all over, from Lego to South Africa to schools all across the U.S., Oklahoma City to Chicago or wherever, and just saying, what if we explored what we're curious about as opposed to what we fear will go wrong? And in essence, what you did earlier with that Google Doc, we're collecting a butterfly net, any expression of that. Not so we can be right, because we want to chase the rabbit, breadcrumbs, things that you lay out. Ultimately, that's our challenge. Is not what's the right answer and how do we go there. Instead, how do we treat this as a non-negotiable? Whether you work with iPads or hamsters, we don't care. Whether all of your kids are going to go to university or frankly drop out and try to get a teal fellowship, we don't care. What we care about is not getting us to this, but instead double downing on empathy and wonder and allowing the chips to fall where they go. The very last thing we'll lead you, there was going to, but it felt like a teacher exercise, that we need one more exercise, so we just did it. But we don't leave you with one little quote, and then we will be available to you however we can, or just get out here. If you've read The Petit Prince or The Little Prince, have you ever gone to Wikipedia and studied the author's life? His story, The Little Prince, is a hint of what he experienced. He was an extraordinarily magical human being who also survived in the desert. He's got this great adage that has become a mantra for us, a manifesto for us, that even when we're asked to design a new high school, make a makerspace, a library, build a whole new university campus, we always know that the invitation is not met. The boat, if you would, is the easy one. The curriculum is the easy one. The schedule is the easy one. The funding is the easy one. From a design standpoint, the real spirit is, can we build the capacity along with the force? And if we serve kiddos, can we be unapologetic, paint our faces blue, but also do it with a spirit of strong? So in essence, we want to say thank you. If it would be an asset or of use, or introduce you to something that's more something else for you, we'd be delighted. We appreciate your time. We hope you have an extraordinary conference. We're going to have a tweet up about actual architectural learning spaces and environments today at 4 o'clock here. So if you just want to geek out about how to design a library or furniture, we can do that. We can get together. And then tomorrow morning, we're doing a different one for leaders of schools that need strategic ways of leadership. So it's a curriculum model. So if you're interested, some of this will be the same, but we'll have a different bias towards who we leadership. Beyond that, thank you.